The great hall of Orbital Haven was filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Some had scales that shone like precious metals. Others floated in special tanks filled with the gases of their home worlds. A few stood on legs too many to count. They had all come here for one reason. The Empire had sent a message, and that message was war. Ambassador Park stood near the back of the hall. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years speaking for humanity among the stars, and in all that time he had never felt so small. The other species barely looked at him. To them, humans were children who had only just learned to walk among the stars. Earth had joined the Galactic Assembly just 40 years ago. In a galaxy billions of years old, that was less than a heartbeat. The ambassador stood at the center of the hall. His name was, and he was terrifying to look at. There were tall creatures covered in hard black shells. Their eyes glowed red like dying stars, and their voices sounded like metal scraping against stone. Spread his 4 arms wide as he spoke. "The Empire requires 3 systems along the outer rim," he said. "The Assembly will give us these systems. In return, we will not destroy every station and colony in our path." Silence filled the hall. No one dared to speak. They had conquered 12 civilizations in the last century. Their fleets were massive. Their weapons were powerful, and they had never lost a war. An old creature with blue skin and 6 eyes finally spoke. "What guarantee do we have that you will stop at 3 systems?" Laughed, it was an ugly sound. "You have no guarantee, you have only my word. And my word is this: give us what we want or we will take everything." The representatives began to whisper among themselves. Most of them were already nodding. They would surrender. They always did. It was easier to give away a few systems than to fight a war they could not win. Park closed his eyes. He thought about Earth. He thought about the billions of people who had never seen the stars. They trusted their leaders to protect them. They believed that humanity had a future among the galaxies, and now was watching that future fade away. He raised his hand. The hall went quiet. Every eye, every sensor, every floating tentacle turned toward the human ambassador, tilted his head, his red eyes burning with amusement. "The human wishes to speak," said. "How interesting. Tell me, soft creature, what wisdom does your young species have to offer?" Stepped forward. His heart was beating fast, but his voice was steady. "I say we do not surrender. I say we stand together and fight." Laughter filled the hall, not just but from dozens of other species. The blue-skinned creature shook his head sadly, a floating jellyfish-like being pulsed with colors that meant pity. "Humans," said a creature made of living crystal, "you do not understand. They cannot be defeated. We have calculated the odds. There is no path to victory." "Then we make a new path," said. Walked toward him slowly. The commander was twice height and his shadow fell over the human like a blanket of darkness. "Your species has 1 battleship," said. "1. We have hundreds. Your people come from a death world, yes. You survived poison, air, and dangerous animals, but surviving is not the same as winning." He leaned down until his face was close to his. "Go home, little human. Hide on your rock. Let the real powers of the galaxy handle this matter." Did not step back, he did not look away. "We will not hide," he said quietly, "and we will not surrender." Stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned away with a dismissive wave. "Your courage is amusing, but courage alone does not win wars." Far above Orbital Haven, floating in the cold darkness of space, the battleship Defiance waited. It was not a beautiful ship. It was not elegant or graceful like the vessels of older species. It was built like a fortress made of steel and fire. Every line of its hull spoke of one purpose: war. On the bridge, Captain stood with her hands clasped behind her back. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She had been a soldier for 20 years, and she had never lost a fight. But she had also never faced odds like these. "Captain," said Lieutenant Shin. He was young, barely 30, but he was the best weapons officer in the fleet. We are receiving Ambassador Park's report. The assembly is going to surrender. Nodded slowly, an Earth command. They have sent new orders. His voice was tight. If they attack the station, we are to engage. The bridge went silent. Every officer understood what those orders meant. One ship against a fleet. It was not a battle, it was a death sentence. Doctor, the ship's medical officer, stepped forward. She was older than most of the crew, with gentle hands and a soft voice. Captain, our crew numbers 412. If we fight, many of them will die. I know, said. And you will still fight. Turned to look at her crew. She saw fear in their eyes, but she also saw something else. She saw determination. She saw pride. She saw the same fire that had burned in human hearts since the first cave dweller had looked up at the stars and dreamed of touching them. We are human, said. We do not abandon those who need us. We do not bow to those who threaten us. And we do not surrender, not today, not ever. The alarm began to sound. Red lights flashed across the bridge. Navigator looked up from her console, her face pale. Captain, she said, ships entering the system, 47 warships. They are heading directly for orbital haven. Looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a fleet of monsters was coming to destroy everything she had sworn to protect. She was afraid. Any sane person would be afraid, but fear had never stopped her before. All hands to battle stations, she said. Today, we show the galaxy what humans are made of. The stars seemed to grow brighter as the Defiance powered up its engines and turned toward the coming storm. The day humanity's battleship made the stars tremble. Part 2, First Blood. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of angry insects. 47 warships, each one bristling with weapons. Their black hulls absorbed the light of distant stars, making them look like holes cut into the fabric of space itself. At the front of the formation flew the flagship, a massive vessel named the Conquest. Commander stood on its bridge, his red eyes fixed on the tiny space station ahead. Scan the area, ordered. I want to know every ship in this system. His officers worked quickly. Numbers and images appeared on the screens around them. Smiled when he saw the results. 23 ships from various species were docked at orbital haven. Most of them were already powering down their weapons. They were surrendering before the battle had even begun. Cowards, said, as expected. Commander, one of his officers said, there is one ship that has not powered down. It is moving toward us. Looked at the image on the screen. It was a human ship, the Defiance. He remembered the human ambassador's foolish words about fighting back. He had thought it was just empty talk. Apparently, the humans were even more stupid than he had believed. One ship, said. They send one ship against us. Are they trying to make us laugh? The bridge crew made sounds of amusement. The idea of a single vessel challenging their fleet was ridiculous. It was like a small fish attacking a group of sharks. It could not end in anything but death. On the Defiance, Captain watched the enemy fleet grow larger on her screen. 47 ships. Each one was larger than her own. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon, and they were all coming for her. How are we looking, Chief? She asked. Chief Engineer's voice came through the speaker. He was down in the engine room, surrounded by machines that hummed with barely contained power. Engines are at full capacity. Shields are charged. We are ready, Captain. Weapons. Lieutenant Shin checked his console. His fingers moved quickly over the controls. All weapons online. Gravity missiles loaded. Plasma cannons ready. The new targeting system is working perfectly. Nodded. The new targeting system. It was something the humans had developed in secret. Most species in the galaxy used predictive targeting. Their computers calculated where an enemy ship would be and fired at that location. It was logical. It was efficient. And humans had found a way to make it useless. Navigator said, plot an approach vector, something they will not expect. Smiled, She was young, but she had a gift for finding paths that others thought were impossible. "I have already prepared something, Captain. It is a little crazy." "Good, crazy is what we need." The Defiance accelerated toward the fleet. On every ship in the system, beings of different species watched in disbelief. The human vessel was not running. It was not hiding. It was attacking. "They have lost their minds," said the crystal creature aboard his own ship. "No species is this foolish." But the humans were not being foolish. They were being human. Watched the approaching ship with growing confusion. The Defiance was not flying in a straight line. It was moving in strange patterns, spinning and diving and climbing in ways that made no sense. His targeting computers tried to predict its movement, but they kept failing. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "We cannot lock weapons on them," an officer reported. "Their flight pattern is too chaotic. It does not follow any known tactical doctrine." "Then shoot where they are, not where they will be." The ships opened fire. Hundreds of energy beams cut through space, turning the darkness into a storm of deadly light. But the Defiance danced between them. It twisted and rolled, slipping through gaps in the fire that seemed impossibly small. And then it fired back. The first ship exploded without warning. One moment it was there, the next it was a ball of expanding flame and broken metal. The gravity missile had hit it perfectly, tearing through its shields like they were made of paper. Stared at the explosion. What weapon was that? Before anyone could answer, 2 more ships died. The Defiance had not stopped moving. It flew through the fleet like a knife through water, striking and disappearing before they could respond. "Reform the fleet," shouted. "Surround them." The ships tried to close the trap, but the human vessel was too fast. It seemed to know where they would be before they got there. It struck at weak points, targeted engines and weapon systems, and left chaos in its wake. Inside the Defiance, the crew worked as one. Doctor moved through the ship, helping wounded sailors and keeping everyone calm. Chief Engineer pushed the engines harder than they were designed to go. Navigator found paths through the enemy fire that should not have existed. And Lieutenant Shin fired again and again, each shot finding its target. But they could not dodge forever. A beam hit the Defiance along its side. The ship shook violently. Alarms screamed. A second hit followed, then a third. "Hull breach on deck 7, someone shouted. "Shields at 40%, another voice called. Gripped her chair as the ship rocked beneath her. Blood was running down her face from a cut on her forehead. She wiped it away and kept her eyes on the battle. "Keep fighting," she said. 5 more ships had fallen, but 42 remained, and they were learning. They were adapting. The trap was closing. Captain said, "There is an asteroid field nearby. If we can reach it, we might be able to lose them." Looked at the map. The asteroid field was dense and dangerous. One wrong move and they would crash into a rock the size of a building, but it was their only chance. "Do it." The Defiance turned and ran. The fleet chased after it, firing constantly. More hits landed on the human ship. More systems failed. More crew members fell. And then they were in the asteroid field. The Defiance dove into the swirling mass of rock and ice. The ships followed, but they were too large, too slow. They had to stop at the edge of the field or risk destruction. Watched the human ship disappear among the asteroids. His officers were silent. They had lost 11 ships, 11 to one enemy vessel. "They are dead," said finally. "No ship could survive in that field, not with the damage they have taken." But deep in his heart, he was not so sure. Inside the asteroid field, the Defiance drifted among the rocks. The lights were dim. The engines were barely running. Smoke filled the corridors, but the ship was still alive. And so was its crew. Captain stood on the bridge looking at the faces of her people. They were hurt. They were tired, but they were not defeated. "We are not done yet," she said. "Not by a long way." Outside, the fleet waited. They believed the humans were finished. They did not understand that for humans, the fight was just beginning. The day humanity's battleship made the stars tremble. Part 3. The Heart of Defiance. The Defiance floated in the darkness of the asteroid field like a wounded animal hiding from hunters. Emergency lights cast red shadows across the corridors. The sound of groaning metal echoed through the ship. Somewhere in the distance, a fire suppression system hissed as it fought flames that refused to die. Captain walked through her ship. Her uniform was torn. Her left arm was wrapped in bandages that were already turning red. But she did not stop. She moved from deck to deck, room to room, speaking to every crew member she passed. "How are you holding up?" she asked a young engineer who was welding a broken pipe. "Scared, Captain," the engineer admitted, "but still here." "That is all I ask," said. "Keep working. We need this ship flying again." In the medical bay, Doctor worked without rest. Her hands moved with practiced skill as she treated the wounded. Burns, broken bones, radiation exposure. The injuries were terrible, but she faced each one with calm determination. "Doctor," a young sailor whispered. He had been hit by flying debris when the hull was breached. "Are we going to die?" Looked at him. He was just a boy, really, barely 20 years old. He had probably joined the fleet because he wanted adventure. He had found something very different. "We might," said honestly, "but not today. Today we fight." The sailor managed a weak smile. "That is very human of you, Doctor." "Yes," said it is. Down in the engine room, Chief Engineer was covered in oil and sweat. He had been working for hours without stopping. The engines had taken heavy damage. By all rights, they should be dead, but refused to accept that. "This bypass will not hold," one of his engineers said. "The power flow is too unstable." "Then make it stable," replied. "We did not build this ship to give up, and neither did these engines." He reached into a mess of wires and circuits, connecting parts that were never designed to work together. It was dangerous. It was probably insane, but it worked. The engines hummed back to life, their sound rough and unsteady but real. "Engines are online," reported to the bridge. "They will not last long, but they will last long enough." On the bridge, Lieutenant Shin was repairing the weapons console. His fingers were bleeding from cuts caused by broken glass, but he did not slow down. Every weapon they had would be needed for what came next. "How bad is it?" asked as she returned to the bridge. "Bad," admitted. "We have lost half our plasma cannons. Shields are at 15%. The gravity missiles are still working, but we only have 4 left." "And the crew?" Navigator looked up from her console. Her eyes were red from crying, though she tried to hide it. 63 dead, over 100 wounded. We are down to less than half our normal crew." Closed her eyes. 63. Each one of them had a name, a family, a life that would never be finished. She remembered the day she had taken command of this ship. She had promised to bring them all home safely. She had failed. But grief was a luxury she could not afford. Not yet. There would be time for tears later if they survived. "The fleet is still out there," she said. "They think we are dead. We need to prove them wrong." Captain said softly, "May I ask something?" "Go ahead." "Why do we fight? We could escape. The asteroid field has several paths that lead away from the. We could run and live. Why do we stay?" Was silent for a long moment. The question hung in the air like smoke. Every officer on the bridge wanted to know the answer. "When I was 12 years old," began, "my colony was attacked by raiders. They came in the night, burning everything. My parents hid me in a storage container. I listened to the screams outside. I heard my mother calling for help, but no help came." She looked at the stars visible through the damaged. "I survived because I was hidden, but I have never forgotten those screams. I have never forgotten what it feels like to be helpless while others suffer." She turned to face her crew. "Out there on Orbital Haven there are thousands of beings who cannot fight. Scientists, diplomats, children. If we run, they will destroy them. If we run, their screams will be on our hands. So we stay, said. It was not a question. We stay, we fight, and we show the galaxy that when humans give their word to protect someone, we keep it. The bridge was silent. Then one by one the officers nodded. They understood. They were afraid, but they understood. I have been studying the fleet formation, said, her voice stronger now. They are arranged in a standard patrol pattern around the asteroid field, but there is a gap behind their flagship. A gap, asked. They expect us to run away from their strongest ship, not toward it. If we can get behind it, we might be able to surprise them. Shook his head. Even if we reach the flagship, we cannot destroy it with only 4 gravity missiles. We do not need to destroy it, said slowly. A plan was forming in her mind. A crazy plan, a human plan. We just need to hurt it. If we can cripple their flagship, they will lose their commander, and an army without a leader is just a crowd. She looked at, can you find us a path through the asteroids, something that will bring us out behind the flagship? Studied her maps. Her fingers traced invisible lines through the maze of rock and ice. It was a puzzle, and she was very good at puzzles. There is a path, she said finally. It will require flying through spaces that are barely wider than our ship. One mistake and we crash, but it is possible. Then we take it. Activated the ship-wide communication system. Her voice echoed through every corridor, every room, every damaged section of the Defiance. This is Captain, we have all lost friends today. We have all been hurt, but we are still here. We are still fighting. In a few minutes, we are going to do something that no one expects. We are going to attack. She paused, letting her words sink in. They believe humans are weak. They believe we are soft. They believe that when things get hard, we give up. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity truly is. All across the ship, wounded sailors climbed back to their stations. Engineers made final repairs. Soldiers loaded their weapons. The Defiance was broken and bleeding, but it was not dead. Not yet. All hands ready, reported. Sat in her captain's chair. The stars waited outside. The enemy waited beyond them. And somewhere out there, a flagship named Conquest was about to learn why humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Take us out, ordered. The Defiance moved forward into the darkness, and the asteroid seemed to part before it like waves before a ship at sea. The day humanity's battleship made the stars tremble. Part 4, The Stars Tremble. Commander stood on the bridge of the Conquest, staring at the asteroid field. 3 hours had passed since the human ship had disappeared into that maze of rock. His officers had told him the humans were dead. His sensors showed no sign of life, but something in his gut told him they were wrong. Send 3 ships into the field, he ordered. Find the wreckage. I want to see it with my own eyes. His officers exchanged nervous glances. No one wanted to enter the asteroid field. It was too dangerous, but no one dared to disobey their commander. 3 warships moved toward the asteroids. They crept forward slowly, their sensors scanning every rock and shadow. They found nothing. The human ship had vanished completely. Perhaps they escaped through the other side, an officer suggested. Shook his head. No, they are in there, watching, waiting. His red eyes narrowed. What are they waiting for? The answer came like a thunderbolt. The Defiance exploded out of the asteroid field directly behind the Conquest. It emerged from a gap between 2 massive rocks that should have been too narrow for any ship to pass through. Its hull was scorched and dented. Smoke trailed from a dozen wounds, but its weapons were glowing with power. Fire, Captain shouted. Lieutenant Shin pressed the button. 2 gravity missiles launched from the Defiance, crossing the distance to the flagship in less than a second. They struck the Conquest in its engine section, tearing through shields and armor like they were made of nothing. The massive warship shuddered. Warning alarms filled its bridge. Commander was thrown to the floor as the deck bucked beneath him. "Return fire," he screamed. "All ships converge on the human vessel." But the Defiance was already moving. It did not fly away from the flagship. It flew toward it, diving underneath the massive ship and using its bulk as cover from the rest of the fleet. The warships could not fire without risking their own commander. "They are insane," one of its officers whispered. On the Defiance, Navigator guided the ship through spaces that should have been impossible. She flew between the flagship and its escorts, using the enemy's own formation against them. Every time a ship tried to get a clear shot, she put another enemy in the way. "Two more missiles left," reported. "Where do you want them?" "Save them," ordered. "Use the plasma cannons, target their weapon systems." The Defiance opened fire with everything it had. Plasma bolts slammed into warships, burning through their weapons and sensors. The human ship was fighting like a trapped animal, striking in every direction at once. On Orbital Haven, thousands of beings watched the battle on their screens. They could not believe what they were seeing. A single human ship, damaged and outnumbered, was tearing through the fleet like a force of nature. "Impossible," said the crystal creature. "This is impossible." "No," Ambassador Park said quietly. He was watching with tears in his eyes. "This is humanity." Commander pulled himself to his feet. His bridge was in chaos. Half his systems were offline. The human ship was still out there, still fighting, still refusing to die. "Enough," he said. His voice was cold with fury. "All ships ram that vessel. I do not care what it costs. Destroy them." The fleet abandoned all tactics. They simply charged at the Defiance from every direction. If they could not outfight the humans, they would overwhelm them with sheer numbers. Captain said, "They are coming from all sides. There is nowhere to run." Looked at the tactical display. She saw the enemy ships closing in. She saw the trap forming around her, and she smiled. "Who said anything about running?" she turned to. "Target the two ships directly ahead. Fire our last missiles on my command." "Captain, trust me." The ships grew closer. Their weapons charged. In moments, the Defiance would be torn apart by crossfire from every direction. "Now," said. Fired, the two gravity missiles streaked toward the approaching ships, but they were not aimed at the ships themselves. They were aimed at the space between them. The missiles detonated, creating a massive shockwave of twisted gravity. The two ships were caught in the blast and thrown toward each other. They collided with terrible force, both vessels exploding in a ball of flame that blocked the path of the ships behind them. The Defiance dove through the explosion, its shields barely holding against the heat and debris. It emerged on the other side, free from the trap. "Hard to port," shouted. The ship turned sharply, coming around to face the conquest again. The flagship was crippled now, its engines destroyed, drifting helplessly in space. Commander stared at the human vessel in disbelief. "This cannot be happening," he said. We do not lose." But they were losing. As the battle continued, more ships fell. The Defiance struck again and again, never stopping, never slowing. The human crew was exhausted. They were wounded, but they would not give up. Chief Engineer worked miracles in the engine room, keeping the ship alive through sheer willpower. Doctor moved through the corridors, treating the wounded even as the ship shook with impacts. Every member of the crew gave everything they had. The surviving ships began to retreat. One by one, they broke formation and fled toward the edge of the system. They had come expecting an easy victory. They had found something else entirely. Commander, an officer on the Conquest, reported, "12 ships remain. The others have been destroyed or have fled. What are your orders?" Was silent. He watched the human ship on his screen. It was barely holding together. Its hull was more whole than metal. Smoke poured from 100 wounds. It should not have been able to fly, let alone fight. But it was still there, still defiant. "Retreat," said. The word tasted like poison in his mouth. "All ships retreat." The remaining warships turned and fled. Their engines flared as they accelerated away from the battlefield. Behind them, they left the wreckage of 35 destroyed vessels and the drifting hulk of their flagship. On the Defiance, Captain watched the enemy disappear into the distance. Her hands were shaking. Her vision was blurring from blood loss, but she was smiling. "They are running," whispered. "They are actually running." "No," said. "They are not running, they are learning." She activated the communication system one more time. "This is Captain to Orbital Haven. The fleet has been defeated. You are safe." Across the station, beings of every species heard her words. For a long moment there was silence. Then the cheering began. Creatures who had never agreed on anything were celebrating together. The impossible had happened. A human ship had made the stars tremble. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The day humanity's battleship made the stars tremble. Part 5. What Humanity Means. The Defiance limped toward Orbital Haven like a soldier crawling home from battle. Its engines stuttered and coughed. Its hull was covered in burns and scars. Emergency patches held together sections that had been torn open by enemy fire. By all measures of engineering and physics, the ship should have been dead. But it kept moving forward, one painful kilometer at a time. Inside the ship, the survivors gathered in the corridors. They were burned and bruised. Many were wrapped in bandages. Some were carried on stretchers. But they were alive, and they had done something that no one thought possible. Captain walked among them. Her left arm was in a sling now, and a bandage covered half her face. But her eyes were clear, and her voice was strong. "We made it," she said. "Every one of you made this possible. I am proud to serve with you." A young sailor named Minu reached out and touched her good arm. "Captain," he said, "what happens now?" Smiled. Now we rest. Now we heal. And then when we are ready, we go back out there and do it all again." The Defiance docked at Orbital Haven with a grinding sound of metal against metal. The docking clamps barely held the damaged ship in place, but they held, and that was enough. When the airlock opened, Captain was the first to step through. Behind her came her crew, walking slowly but with their heads held high. They entered the main hall of the station, the same hall where the Galactic Assembly had met just hours before. This time the hall was not filled with fear. It was filled with wonder. Beings of every species stood watching as the humans walked past. The crystal creature who had laughed at them now stood in respectful silence. The floating jellyfish being pulsed with colors that meant amazement. The blue-skinned elder with 6 eyes bowed his head as Captain approached. "We did not believe it was possible," he said. "We calculated the odds. We studied the numbers. There was no way to win." "There is always a way," replied. "Sometimes you just have to find it." Ambassador Park pushed through the crowd and wrapped his arms around the captain. He was crying openly, not caring who saw. "You did it," he whispered. "You actually did it." "We did it together," said, "all of us." At the far end of the hall, Commander sat in restraints. His flagship had been captured after the battle, its crew too wounded to resist. Now the great commander was a prisoner, brought before the very assembly he had threatened to destroy. Walked toward him. The crowd parted before her, watched her approach with eyes that burned with hatred and confusion. "Why did you not kill me?" he demanded. "I threatened your people. I tried to destroy you. Why am I still alive?" Looked at him for a long moment. She remembered the battle. She remembered watching weapons tear into her ship. She remembered the 63 crew members who would never go home. "Because killing you would not bring back the people I lost," she said. "Because mercy is not weakness. And because I want you to live long enough to understand something." "Understand what?" "That we are not your enemies." Crouched down so she was at eye level with the commander. "We could have been friends. We could have built something together. Instead, you chose conquest. You chose fear, and look where it brought you." Had no answer. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. Ambassador Park stepped forward to address the assembly. The hall fell silent as he began to speak. "Today, you saw what humanity can do," he said. "You saw one ship stand against a fleet. You saw 400 beings hold the line against 47 warships. But I do not want you to remember this day because of our weapons or our tactics." He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of creatures from dozens of different worlds. "I want you to remember that we fought not for conquest, not for glory, not for power. We fought because innocent beings were in danger. We fought because that is who we are." In the medical bay of Orbital Haven, Doctor was treating the wounded. Not just human wounded, but wounded too. The captured enemy soldiers watched in confusion as human doctors and nurses tended to their injuries with the same care they gave their own people. "Why do you help us?" one soldier asked. "We tried to kill you." Finished bandaging his arm and looked at him with kind eyes. "Because you are hurt, that is reason enough." The soldier stared at her. He had been taught his whole life that other species were inferior, that they were the strongest and the best. But this small human woman, with her gentle hands and soft voice, had shown him something he had never seen before. She had shown him compassion. News of the battle spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. On 1,000 worlds, beings watched recordings of the Defiance flying through impossible storms of weapons fire. They saw a damaged ship refusing to retreat. They saw humans doing what everyone said could not be done. The phrase began to appear in messages and broadcasts. Human defiance. It became a symbol, a sign of hope. When someone faced impossible odds and refused to give up, they were said to have human defiance. On the home world, the Emperor watched the recordings in his private chamber. He saw his greatest fleet destroyed by a single ship. He saw his best commander captured and humiliated. And he saw the way other species were looking at humanity now. Not with fear, with respect. "Perhaps," the Emperor said slowly, "we should reconsider our expansion plans." Back on Orbital Haven, the celebrations continued long into the night, but Captain did not celebrate. She stood on the observation deck looking out at the stars. So many stars, so many worlds, so many possibilities. Lieutenant Shin found her there, standing alone in the darkness. "You should be resting, Captain," he said. "Doctor's orders." Smiled slightly. "I will rest soon. I just wanted to look at the stars for a while." Stood beside her. Together, they watched the distant lights that had witnessed their battle. "Do you think they will remember us?" asked. 1,000 years from now, will anyone remember what happened here today?" "Yes," said. "They will remember. Not because we won a battle, not because we defeated a fleet. They will remember because we showed them something they had forgotten." "What is that?" Turned to face him. In the starlight, her eyes shone with something that looked almost like peace. "That the size of the fight does not matter. What matters is the size of the heart, and human hearts are the largest in the galaxy." She looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were talking about humanity, wondering about them, dreaming about them. The galaxy had changed today. It had learned that there was a species that did not know how to surrender. "They will remember this day," said softly, "not because we won, but because we chose to stand. And sometimes that is the most powerful thing anyone can do." The stars seemed to shine brighter as she spoke. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the galaxy began to understand what it truly meant to be human. It meant never giving up. It meant protecting those who could not protect themselves. It meant looking at impossible odds and saying, "I will try anyway." It meant defiance. And the stars would never forget it.